What if you fell asleep tonight and didn't wake up in your room? No ceiling above you, no walls, no sound of traffic, no hum from the refrigerator down the hall. Instead, warmth on your face, the smell of dust and dry leaves, something breathing somewhere close that is much larger than you. Imagine a continent that still exists on the map, but not in the shape you know. Same red earth, same wide sky, but the animals walking across it have never seen a human face, and most of them will be gone before history begins. There are footprints in that soil that no living creature could make. There are birds there that can't fly and weigh more than you do. There are lakes where there is now only salt. And somewhere in that landscape, you are lying on your side with sand in your hair, slowly beginning to wake up. So let's ask it gently and let's answer it slowly. What if you woke up in prehistoric Australia? The first thing you notice is the light. It comes through your eyelids as a soft orange glow, and for a few seconds, you don't question it. You think it's morning. You think you've left a window open. Then the ground under your shoulder registers. And it is not a mattress. It's grainy, it's cool in the shade, and already warm where the light touches it. And when you press your palm against it, fine red dust rises between your fingers and drifts sideways in a breeze that smells of eucalyptus oil and something faintly sweet, like crushed grass seed. You sit up slowly. You're on a low rise of sand, sparse with tussocks of hard, spiky grass. Below you, maybe 100 paces down, a shallow lake stretches out further than you can easily judge. Not blue, a kind of pale silver brown, with reeds standing in the margins and long pink smudges of flamingo-like birds. Far out in the shallows, the air over the water shimmers already, and the sun has only just cleared the trees. The trees are the strange part. They're eucalypts, some of them with that familiar peeling bark and those hanging, sickle-shaped leaves that never quite give proper shade. But mixed among them are casuarinas with drooping needle branches and squat cycads with crowns like green fountains, plants that belong to a much older world. The mix feels almost right and not quite right, the way a familiar street looks in a dream. And then something moves at the edge of the reeds, and you forget the trees entirely. It's enormous. At first, your brain tries to make it a cow, because that's the size bracket your mind reaches for. But it isn't a cow. The proportions are wrong. The back is a long, humped curve. The legs are short and heavy and slightly bowed. The head is broad and blunt, held low, and the whole animal moves with a rolling, unhurried gait, tearing at salt bush with a slow sideways pull of its jaw. It's a wombat the size of a rhinoceros. This is Diprotodon optatum, and it is the largest marsupial that has ever lived. A full-grown male stands about as tall at the shoulder as you do, stretches close to 3 meters from nose to tail, and can weigh somewhere near 2.5 tons. Think of a small family car with fur on it, grazing. There are 3 of them here, 2 adults and 1 much smaller, and it's the small one you find yourself walking toward, slowly, without deciding to. You should be afraid. You aren't, and later you'll wonder about that. The young one lifts its head and looks at you with small, dark, wet eyes set far apart, and it does not run because nothing in its ancestry has ever taught it that a 2-legged animal is worth running from. It sniffs the air. It takes 1 heavy step closer. You put your hand on its flank. The hair is coarse and dense, like a doormat, and beneath it, the animal is astonishingly warm in a way that makes your own body feel cold and thin. By comparison, you can feel the breath moving through it. When it chews, you hear it. A wet grinding of flat teeth, and the two long front incisors in its lower jaw catch the light, curved and yellow, the tools it uses to shear off shrub stems the way garden clippers do. Here's the detail that stays with you. If you could look underneath, you'd find a pouch, and that pouch opens backwards toward the animal's hind legs. It's a trait Diprotodon shares with wombats, and the reason is practical. A digging animal that faced its pouch forward would fill it with soil. Evolution solved that problem long before this creature grew large enough that digging stopped mattering, so it carries the design anyway. An inherited habit written into its body, a small piece of leftover history, walking around inside a 2-ton animal. A pouch that size could hold a full-grown human child. The mother makes a sound, low and rumbling, more felt than heard, and the young one turns and shoulders away from you toward her, and you're left standing on open ground with your hand still out, which is when the other noise comes. It arrives from your left, from a stand of trees maybe 200 meters off. It isn't a roar. It's worse than a roar in a way, because it's quieter than one. A short coughing rasp, then silence, then the same sound again, closer, and this time you hear something underneath it. A low, throaty stutter, almost like a growl being swallowed. Every Diprotodon in front of you stops chewing at the same instant. They don't run. Animals that size rarely need to, but all three heads swing toward the trees, and the mother places herself between the sound and her calf. And something about that arrangement, that quiet, practiced positioning, tells you more than the noise itself did. You move, not toward the water, because the reeds are tall and you can't see through them. Along the ridge instead, quickly, half crouched, feeling the heat of the sand through your clothes, and you don't look back until you've put a low bank of stone between yourself and whatever made that sound. The country changes fast when you walk it. Within a few minutes, the lake is behind you, and the ground rises into open woodland, wide-spaced trees, and knee-high grass, gone straw-colored. And the noise here is extraordinary. You'd expected a prehistoric world to sound empty. It doesn't. It sounds crowded. Insects, thousands of them, a constant high shimmer of sound, something invisible clicking in the branches, cockatoos screaming somewhere ahead, with exactly the same voice they use today, which is somehow the most unsettling detail so far, that some sounds have not changed at all in 50,000 years. And then, ahead of you, the grass moves in a way that grass shouldn't. You stop. Two shapes rise out of it and rise, and keep rising until they're standing taller than you are. Kangaroos, but not the ones you know. The face is what you notice first. It's short and deep and blunt, like a rabbit's face on a body 2 meters tall. With the eyes set forward rather than to the sides, the arms are long, and they end in a single enormous clawed finger on each hand. The feet don't have the splayed toes you'd expect. Each foot ends in one large hoof-like claw, a single toe, like a horse's. This is Procoptodon goliah, the giant short-faced kangaroo, and it weighs around 200 kilograms, roughly 3 times a big red kangaroo alive today. You watch one of them reach up, hook a branch with that long-clawed hand, and pull the leaves down to its mouth, and you understand instantly what the arms are for. This animal doesn't graze. It reaches. It's built to strip the tops of shrubs that nothing else can reach. And it's watching you back. Not nervously, not aggressively. It's simply looking, jaw moving sideways, ears turning independently. the way an animal looks at something it has no category for. Then both of them turn their heads sharply toward the trees behind you, not at you, past you, and you realize you can hear that coughing rasp again, and it is no longer 200 meters away. You don't run. Something older than thinking tells you not to, and for once you listen. You lower yourself into the grass instead, slowly, until the straw-colored stems close over your head, and you stay there with your heart going hard against your ribs, and you watch. The two short-faced kangaroos have gone very still. One of them lifts a forelimb and holds it there, mid-air, that long single claw hanging, and then the grass, 40 meters to your right, splits open. What comes out of it is low. That's the first thing your mind reports. Low and wide, and moving with a fluid economy that makes everything else in the landscape look clumsy. The body is about the length of a large dog, but the build is completely wrong for a dog. Heavier through the chest, deeper in the shoulder, the front legs thick and slightly bowed, the fur a plain sandy gray that vanishes against the dry grass until it moves. It covers the ground between the grass and the nearest kangaroo in perhaps 3 seconds. This is Thylacoleo carnifex, the marsupial lion, and the name undersells it. It weighs somewhere between 100 and 130 kilograms, about the size of a leopard, and pound for pound, it has the most powerful bite of any mammal ever measured, living or extinct. A lion 3 times its weight bites with roughly the same force, but the mechanism is stranger than the strength. Thylacoleo doesn't have the long stabbing canines you'd expect. Its killing teeth are its premolars, and they've evolved into a pair of long, blade-shaped shears set along the sides of the jaw, like bolt cutters mounted inside a cat's face. And on each thumb, there is a claw, enormous, curved, retractable, held clear of the ground when it walks, so the point stays sharp. You see all of this in fragments because the animal is not still long enough to be studied. It hits the kangaroo low, and the two of them go down together in a mess of dust and thrashing limbs. And the sound is nothing like what films have taught you. It isn't a roar. It's a series of short, wet, coughing grunts, and underneath that, the sound of the grass being flattened. The second kangaroo is already gone, and so are you. You move at a crouch, fast, back the way you came and then sideways, keeping the noise behind your left shoulder, and you do not stop until the ground drops away into a dry creek bed and you can put a wall of red clay between yourself and everything else in the world. You sit in the sand with your back against that clay for a long time. Here's what makes Thylacoleo so unsettling. And it isn't the teeth, it's the ancestry. That animal is not descended from anything like a cat. Its closest living relatives are wombats and koalas. It comes from a lineage of leaf eaters and plant eaters, and somewhere along the way, that lineage produced this. The blade teeth are modified chewing teeth. The whole predator is built out of spare parts from a herbivore, which is a thing evolution does quietly, again and again, when nothing else has claimed the job. And the scratch marks found on cave walls in southern Australia, deep grooves cut into limestone meters above the floor, suggest it could climb, and climb well. You look up at the trees along the creek. You keep looking up for a while. The creek bed leads you east, and the country opens as you walk it. The trees thin out. The grass gets shorter and harder, and after maybe an hour, the creek widens into a broad clay pan with a shallow soak at its center, a spread of brown water no deeper than your ankles, ringed by mud. that has been churned into 1,000 overlapping prints. There are birds standing in it. You count 9, and you stop counting because the size takes over. They stand about 2 meters tall. Their bodies are heavy and rounded, carried on thick legs with short toes, and their wings are stubs, useless, tucked tight. But the head is out of proportion to everything. A huge deep beak, blunt at the tip, mounted on a neck that looks too slender to hold it up. This is Genyornis newtoni, and it weighs around 230 kilograms. To put that beside something you know, an ostrich weighs about 130, a large emu weighs 50. This bird is roughly 4 to 5 times the weight of an emu, and it cannot run anywhere near as fast because it was never built to. They drink in a rhythm that's almost hypnotic, beak down, a long scooping pull. Then the head lifts and the whole neck goes back so the water can run down. And for a second, every bird in the group has its throat exposed to the sky at once. Their eggs are the size of a large melon and weigh about 1.5 kilos. Fragments of them turn up in ancient sand dunes across the continent by the thousand, some of them scorched, burned in small concentrated fires, which is one of the few pieces of physical evidence we have that these birds, and the first people to arrive here, occupied the same landscape at the same moment. But that's a story for later, and you don't know it yet. Standing there at the edge of the clay pan, something touches your boot. You look down, and there is an animal beside your foot, and it is the strangest thing you have seen all day, which by now is a hybar. It's a echidna, a spine-covered, waddling, long-nosed echidna, entirely familiar in shape. It is the size of a sheep. Murrayglossus hacketi, the giant echidna, around 30 kilograms, roughly 5 times the mass of the ones alive today, with legs proportionally longer and a stride that's less of a shuffle and more of a walk. It has not noticed you as a threat. It has noticed you as an obstacle. Echidnas hunt almost entirely by smell and by electroreception, picking up the faint electrical signals of insects moving in soil through receptors in the tip of the snout. And this one is working a line of ants along the clay pan edge with total commitment. You crouch. You run your fingers along the fur between the spines, and it is soft, much softer than the spines suggest, and warm, and the animal's whole body vibrates faintly as it digs. Echidnas lay eggs, so does the platypus. They are the only mammals on Earth that do, and this creature at your feet belongs to a lineage that split off well over 100 million years ago and simply never stopped working. It shoulders past your knee and keeps going. You're smiling, actually smiling, when the Genyornis behind you go up, all 9 at once. A ragged explosion of wingless panic and hoarse, honking alarm calls, and the whole flock scatters outward from the water in every direction, mud flying. Something has come out of the reeds on the far bank. It's a snake, and your first estimate is wrong by half. You think 3 meters. Then more of it keeps arriving, sliding out of the reeds in thick, unhurried coils. And it doesn't stop until there is close to 6 meters of it in the open, as thick through the middle as your thigh, patterned in dull olive and brown blotches that break its outline against the mud. Wonambi naracortensis. It is not a python, and it is not related to one. It belongs to a much older family of snakes that was already ancient when this landscape formed, and its skull is more primitive, less flexible, unable to open as impossibly wide as a modern python's, which means it hunts differently. It cannot swallow anything enormous, so it doesn't try. It waits, buried at the edges of waterholes for something small enough, and it takes what comes to drink. One of the Gagnorni's chicks has run the wrong way. You watch the strike, and it is over before your body has processed it, not fast in a violent sense, fast in a quiet, muscular, folding way. The coils closing around the bird, like a rope tightening on itself, and then it goes still, and the clay pan goes quiet, and the surviving birds drift back into a loose group 30 meters off and begin, cautiously, to drink again. That's the thing nobody tells you about this world. It doesn't stop. There's no aftermath, no pause for what just happened. The water is still the only water. You back away from the soak, slowly, and it's while you're watching your footing on the mud that you notice the print. It isn't a bird track. It isn't a hoof or a paw. It's a long three-toed impression pressed deep into the clay, each toe ending in a claw mark that has cut through the crust, and behind it, dragging away toward the scrub, a single continuous groove. The groove is the width of your arm, and it's fresh. You follow it. That's the honest part of this. And you'll think about it later. You have just watched a snake take a bird bigger than a wolf, and there is a fresh track in the mud, made by something that drags its tail like a fallen branch. And instead of walking the other way, you follow it, because a groove that wide doesn't lead to an animal you've ever seen, and some part of you needs to know what does. The trail leaves the clay pan and runs into low scrub, and it's easy to read. The tail cuts a clean channel through the dust. On either side of it, the footprints alternate in a wide, sprawling gait. The legs set well out from the body, and each print is longer than your own hand and foot together. The smell reaches you before the sight does, sweet and thick and wrong. Meet in the sun. You crouch behind a wall of dead salt bush and part the branches with your fingers. And there, in a clearing perhaps 30 meters across, is a diprotodon, lying on its side, dead and not long dead, and standing over it, with one clawed foot planted on the rib cage, is a lizard. You have to correct yourself twice before the scale settles. It's 5.5 meters long, perhaps 6. The body is heavy through the chest and belly, slung low between splayed legs, and the tail runs back behind it in a long flattened blade that lies across the ground and moves, occasionally in a slow sweep. The skin is a dull gray-brown, beaded, dusty, with faint darker bands across the back that have gone almost invisible with age. The head is blunt and broad, and there is a pale forked tongue flicking out of it, in and out, tasting the air with the patience of something that has never needed to hurry. Varanus priscus, Megalania, the largest terrestrial lizard the world has ever produced. Weight estimates argue with each other, but even the cautious ones put a big adult somewhere between 300 and 500 kilograms. Set that against a Komodo dragon, the largest lizard alive today, which tops out around 70. This is the same animal design, the same lineage, the same forked tongue, and the same rolling walk, scaled up until it outweighs a horse. And here's the detail that changes how you look at it. The venom glands found in Komodo dragons and in other monitors are not a recent invention. They run deep in the family, which means the odds are good that the animal in front of you carries them too, and that the teeth in that jaw, curved and serrated like small steak knives, do not need to kill you outright to have already finished the job. It bends and takes hold of the diprotodon's flank. You expect a tearing sound. What you get instead is a slow, grinding, sideways wrench, the whole body of the lizard braced and turning, the front legs pushing off the carcass, and then a section of hide comes away and is gone in 3 convulsive swallows. It doesn't chew. Monitors don't. They work meat loose and take it whole. There are other animals in the clearing. You hadn't seen them because they're at the edges, low in the grass, and they are black. Half a dozen of them, squat and heavy-shouldered, the size of a stocky dog, with wide heads that look too large for their bodies. Devils, sarcophilus, but bigger than the ones that survive today, noticeably bigger, closer to twice the mass, and every one of them is screaming. That's the only word for it. The sound they make is somewhere between a cough, a shriek, and a rusted hinge. And they make it constantly, at each other, at the lizard, at nothing. It's not aggression exactly. Devils argue about food with volume rather than violence, a whole social system built on being the loudest thing at the carcass, and the noise is so absurd and so continuous that you almost laugh out loud, crouched in the salt bush, 30 meters from a lizard that could eat you. One of them darts in, grabs a strip of something, and is chased out again by a lunge of that enormous head. They will strip the rest. Devils eat bone. Their jaws generate a bite force that, adjusted for size, is among the strongest of any mammal, and a group of them will reduce a carcass to a stain in the grass, hide, teeth and all. Within a night, you start to back away, and the lizard stops moving. It doesn't turn its head. It simply stops mid-swallow with its tongue half out, and you understand, in a cold rush, that it has tasted you on the air. You don't run in a straight line. You run downhill because you remember from somewhere that heavy-bodied animals are worse on a slope, and you keep running until the ground drops out into a gully and the light changes completely. You have gone from open country into another world in about 90 seconds. The gully is deep and narrow, cut through pale limestone, and there is water in the bottom of it. Real water, moving, cold, running over stone, and the walls are green. Tree ferns lean out from the rock, with fronds 2 meters long. Veins hang. The air is suddenly damp and heavy, and smells of rot and moss, and it is at least 10 degrees cooler. These pockets are real. Across dry Australia, there were gorges and springs that stayed wet through the worst of the arid cycles, and they preserved fragments of the ancient rainforest that once covered the whole continent. Refuges, small, green rooms where an older Australia kept going while everything around it turned to sand. You drink from the stream with both hands, and it is the best thing you have ever tasted. Then a tree moves, not the leaves. The trunk, a section of bark the size of a door, peels sideways and falls, and what pulled it off is standing on its hind legs against the trunk, and you cannot immediately decide what it is. It's about the size of a cow, maybe a ton. It stands with its 4 limbs braced against the tree, and those 4 limbs end in 3 claws, so long and so curved that they look like they belong on a different animal entirely, like something borrowed from a sloth. The neck is thick, and the face has no proper nose. The whole front of the skull is drawn back and open, the nasal opening retracted high up between the eyes. And out of that gap comes a long, dark, muscular tongue that is working over the stripped patch of trunk in slow sweeps. Palorchestes Azael. Nobody knows quite what to call it in plain language. It has been described as a marsupial tapir, which is wrong but useful. The retracted nose almost certainly supported something fleshy and mobile. A short trunk or a heavy prehensile lip. The claws tore bark and hauled down branches. The forelimbs were so heavily muscled and so locked in their joints that the elbow could barely straighten, which is unlike any other mammal we know of. It is, by any measure, one of the strangest animals that has ever lived, and it is standing 10 meters from you eating a tree, and it does not care about you at all. You watch it for a long time, long enough that the light in the gully starts to go amber, and then, further down the water, something else steps out onto the stones. It's dog-shaped, sandy gold, with a long stiff tail that doesn't swing like a dog's tail, held out straight behind it like a rudder. Down its lower back and rump run dark stripes, a dozen or so, clean and evenly spaced. A thylacine. It stops on the wet rock and looks up the gully at you, and it opens its mouth, and the jaw keeps opening far past the point where a dog's would stop, a slow, enormous gape of nearly 80 degrees, which is a threat display, and a yawn and a stretch all at once. A second one comes out behind it, smaller, following. They cross the stream without hurrying, and they're gone into the ferns, and the whole encounter lasts perhaps 8 seconds. 60,000 years from now, that animal will still exist. It will hold on in Tasmania long after it vanishes from the mainland, long enough to be photographed, filmed, kept behind wire. The last one will die in a Hobart Zoo on a cold September night in 1936, and the striped shape you just watched cross a stream will become the most searched for ghost on the continent. You don't know any of that, standing there with wet hands. You only know that the light is going. The gully walls are pale limestone, riddled with hollows, and about 40 meters up the slope, there's a proper opening, a dark mouth in the rock wide enough to walk into, with a fan of loose stone spilling out below it. Shelter. Out of the wind, off the ground, one entrance to watch. You climb toward it as the last of the light drains out of the sky, and you're almost at the lip when you stop, because you can hear something from inside. Slow, regular. Something in there is breathing. You should back away. You know that. Instead, you stand absolutely still at the lip of the cave, with your hand flat against cold limestone, and you listen, because the breathing is not what you expected. It's too slow, too deep. There's a faint, wet rattle at the end of each exhale, and between breaths, there are long, unhurried pauses, and nothing that hunts sounds like that. Things that hunt breathe quietly. You lean in. The cave mouth is wide but low, and the last gray light reaches maybe 5 meters before it gives up. In that gray, filling most of the floor space, is a shape. It's lying down, broad-backed, heavy, the size of a large ox. And as your eyes adjust, you start to pick out details. Short legs folded under, a blunt, deep skull, and on either side of that skull, flaring out sideways, 2 enormous cheekbones that give the whole face a strange, wide-set look, like a mask. Zygomaturus trilobus, a cousin of the Diprotodon you touched yesterday morning, though cousin undersells the difference. This one is built for swamp. It weighs perhaps 500 kilograms, and its teeth and jaw suggest it spent its life shoulder-deep in reed beds, shearing off soft vegetation with a pair of forward-pointing lower tusks that jut from the front of its mouth like a pair of blunt chisels. The flaring cheekbones anchored the muscles that did the work. It has one eye open. It has had one eye open the entire time. It is not going to move. You are not worth moving for, so you step over its outstretched forelimb, slowly, feeling absurd, and go past it into the dark. The floor changes underfoot Almost immediately, it stops being sand and starts being something that crunches and shifts and rolls slightly under your weight, and you crouch and put your hand down and pick up what you're walking on. It's a jawbone. You feel along it in the dark, small, delicate, a row of tiny sharp teeth, some kind of little marsupial predator, dead long enough that the bone is dry and light as a shell. You put it down and pick up another, and it's a rib, and another, and it's a section of something's spine. And you understand what this floor is made of. These caves are traps. Across the limestone country of southern Australia, there are systems where the only opening for tens of thousands of years was a hole in the roof hidden by scrub. Animals fell in, not occasionally, continuously, for 250,000 years, one at a time, and the ones that fell could not climb out, and so the floor of those chambers became a slow accumulation of everything that lived on the surface above. That is why we know any of this. That is where the marsupial lion skeletons came from, and the giant kangaroos, and the small things nobody would have guessed at, an entire lost fauna, catalogued by gravity. You are standing in the archive while it is still being written, and then the roof comes alive. It happens without warning. 1 second, the darkness above you is empty, and the next it is full of a dry, leathery, rushing sound, and the air is moving, and something brushes your ear. You go down into a crouch with your arms over your head, bats, hundreds of them, pouring out of the deeper dark and streaming past you toward the mouth of the cave in a river that keeps coming and coming. But they aren't small. In the half-light at the entrance, you catch them properly for a second, and their wings span 1/2 meter across. They're pale, almost white-gray, with enormous ears joined together above the head and a strange upright flap of skin standing on the nose. Macroderma gigas, the ghost bat, Australia's only carnivorous bat, and the Pleistocene population was larger and more widespread than the fragile remnant that survives today. It does not eat insects, or not only, it eats mice, birds, frogs, other bats. It drops onto prey from above, wraps it in those broad wings so it cannot struggle, and kills it with a bite to the neck, and then carries it back to a favored feeding perch to eat, which is why the floors under ghost bat roosts are carpeted in tiny bones. Some of the bones you're kneeling on are theirs, not the bats. Their meals. The stream thins and stops, and the silence afterwards is enormous. You go back to the entrance and sit down with your back against the rock a few meters from the sleeping Zygomaturus, because at some point in the last 30 seconds, a half-ton herbivore has become the safest company available. Night comes down fast. The temperature falls with it, faster than you'd believe. Inland Australia does this. The air is so dry that it holds nothing, and the heat you were sheltering from at midday drains straight up into the sky after sunset, and by full dark, you are genuinely cold, arms wrapped around your knees, shivering in a landscape that tried to cook you 8 hours earlier. But you look up, and you stop thinking about being cold. There's no light anywhere on this continent tonight, except firelight and starlight, and there is not much of the first. What's above you is the full Milky Way, edge on, a river of it, so bright and so dense that it casts a faint shadow from the ferns onto the rock beside your hand. You can see the dark lanes inside it, the great dust clouds, black shapes against the glow. You can see the 2 Magellanic clouds hanging off to the side like scraps torn loose. Every human being for the first 300,000 years of our species saw this every clear night of their lives. It was simply the ceiling. Things move below you in the gully all night. Something large drinks at the stream for a long time, then walks away. Twice something screams, a short, abrupt sound that stops halfway. Once, very close, you hear the coughing rasp you learned yesterday, and you don't sleep for an hour after that. But you do sleep. Eventually, sitting up, cold, on a floor of bones, you wake to birdsong and a shaft of light. The sun has come around far enough to reach into the cave mouth, and it lays a long pale stripe across the floor, and now you can see what you were walking on. Skulls, mostly. Hundreds of them, at every depth, cemented into layers by mineral crust. A short-faced kangaroo skull with those forward-set eye sockets. Something long and low, with blade-like premolars, that you recognize immediately and don't want to look at. And nearer the wall, half buried, a single vertebra, the size of a fist, ridged and heavy, that belongs to no mammal at all. The Zygomaturus is gone. There's a flattened bed of sand where it lay, and a trail of dung outside, and that's all. You climb out of the gully into a morning that's already warming, and the country ahead of you has changed again. The scrub gives way within 20 minutes. The land flattens and opens, and the horizon pulls back until it's absurdly far away, and what lies between is a plain of pale grass and low blue-green saltbush, and beyond that, thin and silver and impossibly wide, is water, not a lake. Lakes have ends. This is one of the great inland waters that filled the continent's center during the wetter phases, systems that today are salt pans, dry white scars visible from space, but which then held water for centuries at a time and fed woodland and grassland and everything that lived in it. You start walking toward it because water is the only navigation you have. The plain is full of animals, and you have to keep stopping. A group of wallabies feeding at the edge of a stand of casuarina, except they're the size of a man and they aren't hopping. They're walking on all fours, deliberately, the way a deer moves through undergrowth. Protemnodon, heavy-limbed, thick-tailed, built for browsing in woodland rather than for crossing distance at speed, and the front limbs are long enough to bear real weight. Further on, something with a face like a koala's and a body like a barrel, standing upright to pull down a branch with both hands, chewing sideways with its eyes half closed in the sun. And underfoot, once you notice it, the ground itself has a story on it. Tracks, thousands of them, and not scattered, all pointing the same way. Kangaroo prints, heavy-hoofed diprotodont prints, bird tracks, small things, large things, all of it churned into a broad band of disturbed earth that runs across the plain from your left to your right and continues past the limit of what you can see in both directions. You crouch and touch it. The edges of the prints are still sharp. Yesterday, at the latest, everything on this plain went the same direction, together, and then from somewhere far out beyond the salt bush, in air so still that it carries perfectly, you hear a sound like thunder rolling under the ground. There isn't a cloud in the sky. The sound doesn't stop. That's the first thing that separates it from thunder. Thunder arrives, breaks, and fades. This holds a low, continuous rolling that you feel in your feet before you properly hear it, coming up through the soles and into your shins. And it is getting stronger. You turn a slow circle on the open plain, and there is nothing to climb. No rise, no rock, nothing but grass and salt bush, and a single dead tree about 80 meters off. And beside that tree, a termite mound. You run for it. The mound is taller than you are, a hard red spire baked to the consistency of brick by 50,000 summers, and you get behind it and press your back to the sun-warmed side and look out past its edge. The horizon is smoking. Dust, a long brown wall of it, rising and drifting east on the breeze, and beneath the dust, the plain has changed color. It's moving, a dark, uneven band spread across 2 kilometers of country, coming steadily toward the water. And as it closes, you begin to resolve individuals out of it, and the individuals are enormous. Diprotodon, not 3 of them, grazing quietly by a lake. Hundreds. They come at a walk. That's what makes it so overwhelming. Nothing is panicking. Nothing is charging. They are simply walking. Several hundred animals each, weighing as much as a car, and the ground cannot absorb that much weight without complaining. The rolling sound is just their feet. They pass within 40 meters of you, close enough that you can smell them. A dense, warm, herbivore smell of crushed vegetation and dust and hide, close enough to see the calves tucked in tight against their mother's flanks, and the old ones at the rear with gray round the muzzle, and the way the whole mass adjusts and flows around obstacles like water, finding a course. It takes 11 minutes for them to go by, and in among them and around them, everything else on the plain is moving in the same direction. Flocks of Genyornis, jogging in loose groups of 20, those huge heads bobbing, Protomnodon bounding on all 4s through the gaps, smaller kangaroos threading between legs that could crush them without noticing. Even the birds, ordinary birds, cockatoos and finches, and small hawks, all working the same line, hunting the insects thrown up by the disturbance. This is not migration in the sense of a season. This is a continent responding to water. We know they did this because of what happened when it went wrong at a place now called Lake Calabana. In the dry heart of South Australia, there is a salt pan with hundreds of Diprotodon skeletons in it, not scattered, not washed together, standing, legs beneath them, feet down, in the position of animals that walked out onto what looked like a drying lake bed, broke through the crust, and could not pull themselves free. Adults and juveniles together, some of them still had the last meal preserved in the gut. They went to the water in a group, and the water had already gone, and the mud kept them. So when this herd passes you and keeps walking, you're watching the same decision being made on a day when it happens to be the right one. The dust thins, the rumble drops away westward, and in the churned ground behind them, something is left. A calf, small by the standards of its species, which means roughly the size of a pig, lying on its side in a trampled hollow, with its legs at an angle no living leg holds. It went down in the crush, or it was already sick, and the herd did what herds do. It is not alone for long. The animal that comes to it steps out of the salt bush with its head low and its ears back, and for a moment your brain files it as a kangaroo and moves on. And then it doesn't move on because something about the shape is wrong. It's built like a kangaroo. Heavy hindquarters, thick tail, long feet, upright stance. It's about the size of a large man, perhaps 70 kilograms, but the skull is deep and short, and the forelimbs are longer and more muscular than any grazing kangaroo needs. And when it drops its head to the carcass and pulls, the teeth working at the hide are not the flat grinding molars of a leaf eater. Propleopus oscillans, the carnivorous kangaroo. The name overstates it, probably. Most researchers Think it was an omnivore. Fruit, tubers, insects, eggs, and whatever meat it could find already dead or too weak to argue. But the evidence is there in the mouth, a long blade-like premolar with a serrated edge running along the side of the lower jaw, a tooth for slicing rather than grinding in an animal that otherwise looks exactly like the ones peacefully eating grass 100 meters away. It braces on its tail and pulls with its forelimbs, and the hide gives, and it eats standing upright with both hands full. You leave it to it. The lake takes another 2 hours to reach, and it grows the whole way until lake stops being adequate, and you're standing on a low dune looking at an inland sea. The far shore is a smudge. There are islands out there, low sandy ones with trees on them. The water is pale and slightly milky with suspended clay, and the shallows go out and out, ankle deep, for what must be 300 meters before they deepen. And the noise. There are birds here in a density you have never encountered and never will again. Pelicans in rafts of several hundred, black swans, ducks in numbers that make the water look textured rather than covered, stilts and avocets working the margins on legs like wire, cormorants strung along a fallen tree with their wings spread out to dry, all facing the same way, like laundry. The sound is a continuous, soft roar of thousands of birds talking at once, and it is one of the most restful sounds you have ever heard. You wade in. The water is warm as bath water in the top few centimeters and cool underneath, and the bottom is soft gray clay that comes up between your toes. Small fish scatter ahead of you in silver bursts. You go out until it's mid-thigh, and you crouch, and you put your whole face in. When you come up, the birds 100 meters to your left are gone. Not flying, gone quiet. There's a hole in the noise, a patch of stillness spreading through the flock, and every head in it is turned the same way. You have watched enough of this landscape by now to know what that means. You start walking back toward the shore, and you do not run, because running in water is the slowest a person can move, and some part of you knows it, and the distance to dry land is suddenly a very long way. 20 meters out, the surface behind you opens. You get one look over your shoulder, and it is enough for a lifetime. A broad, flat, armored head, olive and black, cutting a wake through water that shouldn't be deep enough to hide it. Eyes set on top, the line of the back breaking the surface in a series of ridged plates. Prehistoric, a freshwater crocodile of the Pleistocene, 4 to 5 meters long, with a skull much broader and blunter than any crocodile alive in Australia today, a wide-jawed design built for gripping and rolling rather than for snapping at fish. You reach the shallows and your feet find purchase, and you go up the mudbank on your hands and knees, and you don't stop until there is dry sand under you and 20 meters of it behind you. It doesn't follow. They rarely do. It slides sideways along the drop-off instead, unhurried, and after a moment it sinks, and there is nothing there at all. And within a minute, the birds start up again as though the last 90 seconds had not occurred. You sit on the sand with your heart going and your hands shaking, and absurdly, you laugh. And this is the strange thing about the crocodiles here. There was another kind, and it did not stay in the water. Quincana, they call it, a land crocodile, up to 5 or 6 meters, with long legs held under the body rather than sprawled, and teeth that were flattened and serrated like steak knives instead of round and conical, like a fish catcher's. It hunted on dry ground. It ran things down. which means that on this continent, at this moment, the water was not the only place you needed to watch for crocodiles. You'd rather not have known that. You know it anyway. The sun is dropping toward the far shore and laying a long orange road across the water, and the pelicans have turned into black cutouts on it, and you walk north along the beach because you have to walk somewhere, and the shoreline is easy going. The sand here is fine and pale and holds a print beautifully. There are tracks all along it, bird tracks in their thousands, stitched over each other, the heavy pug marks of something that came down to drink in the night, a long straight line where a snake crossed, and then, above the tide line, in a patch of firm damp sand, you find a set of prints running in a straight line up the beach toward the dunes. 5 toes, a long arch, a deep heel. You stand over them for a long moment, and then you put your own bare foot down beside one, and it fits almost exactly. You follow them. The prints go up the beach at a walk, and near the top of the sand, they're joined by others. 2 more sets, smaller, then a 4th that's smaller again, the stride short and irregular, weaving between the adults, the way a child's does when it can't decide who to walk beside. At the crest of the dune, the sand is dry and the tracks dissolve, and you stand there in a wind that smells of salt and dust, with the whole lake behind you turning copper. Nobody is there, but this is real, all of it, on the old shorelines of the Willandra Lakes in western New South Wales. There is a clay pen holding around 700 human footprints, laid down in wet clay and sealed under sand for 20,000 years. It's the largest collection of Pleistocene human tracks in the world. You can read behavior in them. There are men running, and from the stride length, you can calculate their speed. Around 20 kilometers an hour, over soft ground, barefoot. There are children playing at the edge of the water, and there is one set of tracks made by a man with one leg, moving fast, hopping, keeping up. That's what survives, not bones, a morning. You find where they were camped, about 200 meters along the back of the dune, in the lee, out of the wind. It's a shallow scrape in the sand with a ring of blackened stones at the center and a soft gray drift of ash inside it. Around it, half buried, are freshwater mussel shells, dozens of them, opened and discarded, a few fish bones, fine as pins, and when you sift the sand with your fingers, you find a flake of stone about the length of your thumb, glassy, with one edge so sharp it takes a moment before you feel that it has cut you. You hold your hand up and watch a thin line of blood come out of your finger, and you sit down beside a fire that went out perhaps a week ago. You stay there for the night because the scrape is out of the wind, and because being where people have been is worth something. And once the light is fully gone, the ground starts to move, not dangerously. Everywhere, the dune comes alive with small hopping shapes, dozens of them. Then more than dozens, small kangaroo-like animals, about the size of a rabbit, that move in quick, nervous arcs, and stop dead and move again. Betongs, rat kangaroos. They're everywhere at this hour, and they're everywhere across the entire continent at this moment in history, in numbers that would be unimaginable to anyone from the century you fell asleep in. One of them stops half a meter from your boot, sits back, and works something in its forepaws, and you can hear it chewing. They carry nesting material with their tails. That's the detail that gets you. A bettong will gather a bundle of dry grass, curl its tail around it, and hop home holding it, using its tail like a hand. Something bigger comes past at a slow trot, and every bettong within 10 meters evaporates. It stops beside the old hearth, and even in starlight you can see the ears. They're absurd. They're a third the length of the whole animal, thin enough that the sky shows through them, held forward and turning independently like a pair of scoops. The body is silver gray, the nose long and pointed, and the tail is black with a startling white brush at the end. A bilby. It starts to dig, and it does not dig the way a dog does. It goes down in a controlled, mechanical rhythm, 4 feet alternating, sand pluming out behind it in even pulses, and within 40 seconds, it is buried to the shoulders and still going. Bilbies build spiral burrows 3 meters deep. They dig so constantly and so much that they turn over tons of soil per animal per year, burying leaf litter, opening the ground to water, making seed beds, a whole continent's worth of small diggers, quietly gardening in the dark. It comes up with a witchetty grub, eats it in 2 bites, and moves on. You sleep in the sand beside a stranger's fireplace, with the sound of hundreds of small animals going about their night around you, and it is, unaccountably, the safest you have felt since you got here. Morning comes in gray and pink and absolutely still. There's mist on the lake. It sits a meter above the surface in a flat, unbroken layer, and the sun comes up behind you and turns it the color of skin, and the pelicans out there are just dark heads and necks standing above it, unattached to anything, drifting. The birds start slowly, 1 or 2 calls, then a dozen, and within 20 minutes, the whole shoreline is roaring again. You walk inland. The dune country behind the lake is a different world from the plain. Long parallel ridges of red sand with hollows between them, mallee scrub in the low ground, spinifex on the crests. Walking the ridgeline is easier, so you take it, and by mid-morning, the heat is already climbing and the flies have found you. That's the detail nobody puts in the documentaries. The flies, they're relentless, and they want the moisture at your eyes and your mouth, and after an hour, you stop swatting because swatting is exhausting, and you simply learn to live inside a small permanent cloud of them. In the hollow below you, something is standing on a mound of dirt. The mound is enormous, 4 meters across and knee-high, a broad dome of sand and leaf litter that clearly did not form by itself, and the bird on top of it is the size of a turkey, but heavier-legged, dark brown with pale speckling across the back, and it is working, methodically scraping material from the outer edge inward with backward kicks of its feet. It's a megapode, Progura, one of the giant mound builders that lived here before the malleefowl that survived them. And what it's doing is running an incubator. These birds don't sit on their eggs, they bury them deep inside a mound of vegetation and sand. And the rotting plant matter generates heat, and the bird spends 9 or 10 months of the year regulating the temperature of that mound. It opens it in the morning to let heat escape. It piles sand on when the nights get cold. It checks the internal temperature by pushing its beak down into the mound and holding it there, and it can detect a change of about 1 degree. The chicks hatch underground, in the dark, and have to dig their way up to the surface on their own, which takes hours, and when they emerge, they are fully feathered. They can run immediately, and within a day, they can fly. They never meet their parents. They walk off into the scrub and get on with it. You watch the bird work for a long time from the ridge, and it never once looks up. By midday, the heat has become a physical weight, and you do what everything else out here does, which is stop. You find a group of casuarinas throwing thin shade in a hollow, and you sit against a trunk, and after a while you realize you're not alone in the shade. 15 meters away, 4 large kangaroos are lying on their sides in the sand, with their forelimbs stretched out, doing exactly what you're doing. They're short-faced ones, Simosthenurus, smaller than the giant Procoptodon you met on your first afternoon, about 100 kilograms, with a deep, blunt skull that genuinely does look like a koala's. And when one of them rouses itself to feed, you get to see the strange thing they do. It doesn't hop. It stands upright and walks, one foot then the other, weight shifting, entirely bipedal, in a way no living kangaroo ever is. Then it reaches up with one forelimb, hooks a branch with a long curved finger, draws it down to its mouth, and browses off it while standing there like a person at a bookshelf. Their hands were built for hooking. Their skulls were built for grinding tough, dry, low-nutrient leaves. They were the browsers, the ones who lived off what the grass eaters couldn't touch. The afternoon softens. You walk down out of the dunes, following a line of darker green, and the green turns out to be a creek. Narrow, clear, running over gravel, shaded the whole way by paper barks, with trunks that peel in soft white sheets. You get into it, fully clothed, and lie down in water 20 centimeters deep, and let it run over you, and for about 10 minutes, you stop being an intruder in a lost world and become a warm animal in cool water, which is a much simpler thing to be. Something surfaces 2 meters from your head. It is brown and sleek and about the size of a cat, and it has a duck's bill, and it looks at you with tiny bright eyes set right at the waterline, and then rolls forward and is gone with barely a ripple. A platypus. It comes up again further down, chews something, dives again. When it's underwater, it closes its eyes, its ears, and its nostrils completely. It hunts entirely blind, sweeping that soft, rubbery bill side to side across the stream bed, reading the faint electrical fields of shrimp and larvae moving in the gravel. It lays eggs. It has no stomach, just a gullet running straight into the intestine. The male carries a venomous spur on each hind ankle that can put a grown man in hospital for weeks. It is one animal, and it is a small pile of contradictions, and it is still there in the creeks today, doing precisely this, mostly unwatched. You lie in the water until the light goes gold and the mosquitoes find you. Then you climb back up the long red flank of the dune to watch the sun go down over the lake, because after 2 days here, that has become the thing you do, and the sky over the water turns the color of a peach, and then of a coal, and the birds settle into their evening murmur, and the first stars come through, and that's when you see them, out across the black water, on the far shore, 5 or 6 kilometers away. Points of orange light, not one. You count 7 before you stop counting, spread along the shoreline, small and steady and unmistakably burning. You start walking before the light comes. The lake is on your right the whole morning, and you follow the shoreline north, because the fires are on the far side, and the northern end is where the water narrows. Walking on damp sand at the tide line is easy. Walking is the only plan you have. By mid-morning, there's a haze in the air that isn't mist. It's smoke, thin, blue-gray, laid in flat layers across the middle distance, and it carries a smell you recognize immediately, even here. Eucalyptus burning, sharp and oily and almost sweet. An hour later, you walk into the country it came from, and it isn't what you expect. You expect devastation. What you get is a patchwork. There's a strip, perhaps 300 meters wide, that's been burned recently, blackened stubble, with the trees standing scorched, but alive, their trunks charred waist-high, and their crowns untouched. Beyond it, a stretch that burned some months ago, already covered in a fuzz of new green grass, so bright it looks artificial against the black. Beyond that, older growth, then unburned scrub, thick and tangled, strips and blocks and patches, everyone at a different age. This is not wildfire. Wildfire doesn't do edges. This is what people do to a continent when they've been paying attention to it for tens of thousands of years. Small fires, lit deliberately, at the right time of year, in the cool of the morning, moving slowly, burning off the litter before it can accumulate into something that would take the whole country at once. The new growth that follows pulls grazing animals in, so you know where to hunt. The mosaic means a fire can never run far because it always meets ground that burned last season and has nothing left to give. The old scars in the sediment record show the fire regime of this continent changing, becoming more frequent, less catastrophic, more regular after people arrive. You walk along the edge of the fresh burn, where the ash is still warm through your boots, and the birds are the thing you can't stop watching. There are raptors everywhere, dozens, black kites mostly, dark and loose-winged, wheeling low over the flame line, where the fire is still creeping through the grass a few hundred meters ahead. They're hunting the edge, taking grasshoppers and lizards and small mammals as the heat pushes them out of cover, and they are so casual about it, so unbothered by the smoke that they drift through it and come out the other side. Then one of them drops down into the burning grass, picks something up in its talons, and flies forward ahead of the fire into unburned country and drops it. You watch a thin line of smoke start where it landed. You watch it again 10 minutes later, and a third time from a different bird. This isn't a story. Aboriginal people across northern Australia have described this behavior for as long as anyone has been asking, and it has now been documented by observers on the ground. Black kites, whistling kites, and brown falcons carrying smoldering sticks from an active fire front and dropping them into fresh grass, spreading the burn, opening new hunting ground for themselves. Birds using fire as a tool. You stand in the ash and watch it happen, and you feel the ground shift slightly under everything you thought you knew about who does what on this planet. The heat drives you off the burn by late morning. You cut inland to find shade and instead find holes. The first one you nearly step into. It's a burrow mouth in the side of a low bank, and it is not a burrow you could reasonably call an animal hole. It's a tunnel, 1.5 meters wide, worn smooth at the rim, with a fan of excavated red sand spilling out below it. There's another 20 meters on, then 3 more along the same bank. Whatever dug these has been digging here for generations. You get down and look in, and the tunnel goes back and turns, and the air coming out of it is startlingly cool. Phascolonus gigas, the giant wombat, the largest burrowing marsupial that has ever existed, around 200 kilograms. Think of a wombat the size of a large pig, or roughly 10 times the animal that survives today. Same low, wide, powerful build, same enormous digging claws, same flat, shovel-shaped incisors that grow continuously through life, because grinding through dry grass and roots wears them down. You lie down just inside the entrance, in the cool, and you stay there through the worst of the afternoon. Nothing comes home while you're in it. But something has been recently, because the floor's packed hard and swept clean, and near the entrance, there's a small pile of dung, and every piece of it is a rough cube. Wombats do this. The intestine has sections of differing elasticity that shape the pellets as they pass, and the result is cubes, which have the useful property of not rolling away when you stack them on a rock to mark your territory. It is one of the most quietly ridiculous facts in mammalian biology, and you lie in a burrow in the Pleistocene and laugh about it alone. The afternoon cools, you come out and keep north. Near a soak in a creek bed, you come across emus, ordinary emus, entirely modern, indistinguishable from the ones alive today, and there are 8 of them, and one is sitting. The sitting bird is a male. He's been there for weeks. Emu males incubate alone for around 8 weeks, and in that time they barely eat, barely drink, and lose a third of their body weight, standing up only to turn the eggs. When he shifts, you catch a glimpse underneath, and the eggs are dark, green-black, and enormous, like polished stones. He watches you go past with an eye like a drop of oil and does not move a muscle. The light starts to go long and orange, and the shoreline swings east, and you know you're getting closer because the smoke smell has changed. It's not grass fire smoke anymore. It's wood smoke, contained. The smell of a fire someone is feeding. You cross a line of trees along a dry creek in the last of the light, and you make a mistake. The mistake is looking down, at your footing, instead of up. There are marks on the trunk beside you, 4 parallel grooves, cut deep into the bark, 1.5 meters above the ground, and running upward. You've seen these before, in a cave, on limestone, where nothing that walks could have reached. You look up. It's lying along a horizontal limb about 4 meters above you, 4 limbs hanging down either side, tail draped, and it is looking directly at you, sandy gray, broad through the chest, utterly relaxed, in the way that only something entirely confident about its situation is relaxed. Thylacoleo. Neither of you moves. Here's what runs through your head, and it's oddly clinical. The front paw, hanging 30 centimeters from your shoulder, has a thumb claw on it long enough to open you, like an envelope, and it is retracted, sheathed, because this animal keeps it sharp for something worth using it on. You take 1 step back, then another. It watches. Its tail moves once, a slow, heavy sweep, the way a cat's does. And then it yawns, that appalling bolt-cutter jaw opening wide and closing again, and it rolls onto its side on the branch and looks away from you, out over the creek, entirely uninterested. You walk backwards for 30 meters before you turn around, and then you cover the next kilometer faster than you have moved in your life. Full dark finds you on open ground with the lake on your right and the smell of wood smoke, strong and close. You can see them properly now. 5 fires spread along a low rise above the shoreline, maybe 200 meters apart. Small, tidy fires, banked, not blazing. Around each one, shapes, people. You stop at the edge of what the firelight reaches, close enough now to hear things. The crack of a stick being broken, water being poured, and voices, low and unhurried, someone speaking a long sentence, and then several people laughing at the end of it. There is a rack of some kind over the nearest fire with fish on it. There are children asleep in a row on soft sand. Between two windbreaks of piled brush, there are no dogs. There will be no dogs on this continent for another 50,000 years. Someone is singing quietly on the far side of the camp, not performing the way you sing when you're doing something else with your hands. You stand in the dark just beyond the light, with your heart going, and you have absolutely no idea what to do. And then, from the shadows to your left, much closer than the fires, close enough that you have been standing beside them for some time without knowing it, a voice says something to you. You don't understand a single word. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it doesn't seem to matter very much, because the voice is calm and unhurried, and it clearly asked a question and is now waiting patiently for you to do something. Your eyes adjust and you can make him out. An older man sitting on his heels in the dark, maybe 6 meters away, at the base of a bush, with a long shaft of wood resting across his knees. He has been sitting there the whole time you have been standing there. He has been watching you watch the camp. He says something else, shorter, and stands up. You raise both hands, palms out, which is not a plan so much as an instinct, and he looks at that for a second and then makes a small gesture with his chin toward the fires and starts walking, and there is nothing to do but follow. What happens next takes about an hour, and you will never be able to explain it properly. There's a certain amount of interest in you. Not alarm, interest. People come over and look and go back. Someone touches the fabric of your sleeve between 2 fingers and says something that makes 2 others laugh. A very small child is picked up and held so she can see you, and she looks at you with the flat, unimpressed stare that very small children have everywhere, in every century. And then somebody hands you food, and the looking stops, because that is apparently the end of the matter. The food is fish, cooked directly in the coals, the skin blackened and splitting. It's hot enough to hurt, and you eat it anyway with your fingers, and it is extraordinary, smoky and rich and faintly sweet, with big soft flakes coming away from the bone. Then there's a piece of something else, flat, dense, about the size of your palm, cooked in the ashes so that it's gray and gritty on the outside. You bite it, and it's heavy and nutty and slightly bitter, closer to a dense, unleavened bread than to anything else you can name. It is bread. That's not a stretch. Australia holds some of the oldest evidence anywhere on Earth of people grinding seed into flour. There are grindstones from this continent with starch residues on them going back more than 30,000 years. And some of the wear patterns push considerably further. Grass seed, collected in bulk, winnowed, ground between 2 stones with water, mixed into a paste, and baked in the coals of a fire. You are sitting on sand beside a lake. That will be a salt pan, eating bread that predates agriculture, farming, wheat, and every civilization you have ever read about. Nobody at this fire finds it remarkable. It's dinner. Later, when the talk has gone quiet, you lie on your back near the edge of the firelight and look up. Someone is still awake on the other side of the camp, adding a stick now and then. The Milky Way is directly overhead, and one of the men is speaking to a boy, low, and pointing up into it, not at the stars, but at the dark spaces between them, the great dust lanes, tracing a long shape through them with his finger. You have no idea what he's saying. You understand, though, that he is describing something up there that has a shape and a name. and that the boy is being taught it the way you were taught your times tables. In the morning, they go out, and you go with them, because nobody stops you. There are 4 of them, and they move at a pace that is not fast and does not stop. Everything they carry in one hand. They read the ground constantly. You watch one of them crouch, look at a scrape in the sand, look at the wind, look at a bush 40 meters off, and change direction without saying anything, and the others change with him. The first thing they take without any drama at all. There's a burrow at the base of a spinifex clump. One man puts his hand flat on the sand above it, feeling, then digs with a stick, 3-4 scoops, reaches into the shoulder, and pulls out a goanna 1.5 meters long by the base of the tail. The animal thrashes once. It's finished before the thrash completes. Sand goanna, a big one, and here's a detail. Goannas have forked tongues, like snakes, and they use them the same way, flicking scent particles up onto a sensory organ in the roof of the mouth. They are the only lizards outside the snake lineage to have gone quite so far down that road. By mid-morning, they're working a stand of woodland where protemnodon feed, those heavy 4-legged wallabies you saw on the plain, and the way they do it is nothing like you'd imagined. Nobody chases anything. 2 men circle wide and downwind and simply sit. The other 2 walk in slowly from the opposite side. Not stalking, just walking, talking quietly, letting themselves be seen and heard. The animals drift away from them without panic. A walk, then a few bounds, then a walk again, and drift, without ever making a decision about it, straight past the 2 who were sitting. A spear thrower is a lever. It adds 30 centimeters to the arm and roughly doubles the velocity, and the release is so quiet that you don't hear it. You only see the shaft already halfway there. It's over in a 1.5 seconds. They butcher it where it falls, sharing the work, and they eat some of the liver raw, immediately, standing up, which is the sort of thing that turns out to be less shocking than it sounds when you have been hungry for 3 days. You get a piece, you eat it. The country changes as they carry the meat back by a different route, dropping down onto a floodplain where the grass is green and thick and the ground is soft, and there are paper barks and standing water in the low spots, and it is the lushest ground you have crossed since you arrived. The mood of the group changes at the same time. They spread out. The talking stops. Everyone's eyes go to the reed beds instead of the ground. You are about halfway across when the reeds, 40 meters to your left, come apart. What comes out of them is running. Your mind refuses it for a full second because crocodiles do not do this. Crocodiles are low and sprawled and belong to water. This animal has its legs directly beneath its body, and it is covering ground in a bounding gait like a huge armored dog head up, and it is doing perhaps 30 kilometers an hour across dry land. Quincana, the land crocodile, 5 meters, maybe more, and its teeth, if you were unlucky enough to see them properly, are not the round conical pegs of a fish catcher. They're flattened side to side and serrated along both edges, like blades. That tooth shape has one function in the entire history of life, and it is slicing flesh off large land animals. This is not an ambush predator. This is a pursuit predator wearing a crocodile's skin. Everyone runs. You run with them, and the ground is soft and wet and grabs at your feet, and somebody's hand closes on your upper arm and hauls you left, hard, toward a low outcrop of rock. You go up it on all fours, with your fingers tearing on the stone, and you get onto the flat top of it and turn around, and the animal is at the base, 12 meters below, and looking up, with its jaws slightly open and its throat pulsing. It stays there for perhaps 4 minutes. Then it turns and walks, unhurried, absolutely without embarrassment, back toward the reeds. And the reeds close, and the floodplain is a peaceful green meadow again. Nobody says anything for a while. Then the youngest man says something short, and everyone laughs. In that shaky way people laugh afterwards. And somebody claps you once on the back. And that's the whole debrief. They take the long way home. Around the floodplain, you notice they do not discuss whether to. Late in the day, on the walk back, the older man from the previous night stops on the crest of the dune and doesn't go down the other side. He stands looking south, along the shoreline, with the wind pulling at the grass. You stop beside him. The wind has been building all afternoon, and you hadn't registered it. It's warm now, and it's coming steadily, and the surface of the lake has gone from silver to a hard chopped gray, and the southern horizon has changed color. It isn't cloud. Cloud is gray or white and has edges that mean something. This is a wall, red-brown, dense, standing on the ground rather than in the sky, running the entire width of the horizon, and it is a good deal taller than it was 10 minutes ago. The birds on the lake are going up in sheets. The old man turns and starts down the dune toward the camp at a pace considerably faster than any he has used all day, and he says one word to you over his shoulder, and you don't need the language for that one. If you're still here with me, drifting along, thank you. If these journeys help you rest, you can quietly follow the channel so the next one finds you. Now, the wind. You get down off the dune with sand already stinging the backs of your legs, and by the time you reach the camp, the light has gone strange. Not dim exactly, but wrong, a flat amber that makes everyone's face look sunburned. Nobody is panicking, and everybody is moving. The fires are killed with sand. The brush windbreaks are dragged around and repiled, low and thick, and the children are put behind them. Someone hands you an armful of bark and points, and you understand well enough to jam it into a gap. Then everyone lies down on the leeward side, close together, facing away from the wind, and pulls whatever they have over their heads. The old man takes the corner of a skin and puts it into your hand, and then presses his own hand flat over his mouth and nose, twice until you copy it. And then the storm arrives. The sound comes first, a rising hiss, then a roar, and then the light goes out. Not dusk, out. You open your eyes for 1 second, and there is no sky, no lake, no dune, nothing at all but a churning red-black that moves past you so fast it has texture, and the sand in it hits the exposed skin of your knuckles like thrown gravel, and you shut your eyes and don't open them again for a long time. The air is unbreathable in a way you didn't know air could be. Every breath tastes of iron and earth and something faintly electrical. That's not imagination. Big dust storms carry a static charge, enough that people report their hair lifting, enough that early radio operators used to lose their signal completely. You can feel it on your arms. These storms are among the largest single movements of material on the planet. A serious one lifts millions of tons of topsoil, carries it hundreds or thousands of kilometers, and drops a measurable amount of Australia into the Pacific Ocean and onto the snowfields of New Zealand. Australian dust has been found in Antarctic ice cores. The continent redistributes itself, skyborne, several times a century. You lie under a skin in the middle of one, packed between strangers, and the world screams for 2.5 hours. Something arrives against the windbreak, partway through. You feel it before you hear it. A heavy repeated thud through the ground, and then the brush wall at your back shifts and settles under weight, and there's a rank warm animal smell, and a sound of breathing that isn't human. Nobody moves. Nobody says anything. Whatever it is has come around to the sheltered side of the same wall as you, because on this afternoon there is exactly one sheltered side, and every animal on the dune knows where it is. When the wind finally starts to drop and you can lift your head, there are kangaroos lying against the windbreak 2 meters away. 6 of them, dust-caked, ears flat, and one of them has its eyes closed. They stay for another 20 minutes after the wind eases, and then they get up in their own time and go, and nobody makes a single move to touch them. There's an agreement in that, nothing formal, just an understanding that during that particular 2 hours, the rules were suspended. The world afterwards is unrecognizable. Everything is red, every surface, every leaf, the water at the shoreline, your hands, your teeth. The dune has changed shape. You can see where a whole flank of it has been shifted 20 meters east and piled against a stand of trees, burying them to the first branches. The lake has been beaten opaque. Along the shore there are fish stranded in the ripple lines, and freshwater mussels lying with their shells gaping, and the birds have already found them, thousands of birds, working the whole shoreline in a long, ragged line, a feeding frenzy stretched over 3 kilometers of beach. And above them are the eagles. You count 9 wedge-tailed eagles in one glance, riding the disturbed air with their fingered wingtips spread 2.5 meters across, dropping in on the crowd whenever something worth taking appears. Then one comes over. That makes the others look ordinary. It's bigger, substantially bigger, the wingspan closer to 3 meters, the body deeper, the head heavier, and it moves through the air with a slow authority that clears space around it. Dinatoatus Gaffe, if you want the name it was given, and this one is genuinely new to us. It was described from cave deposits only a few years ago, from bones that had been sitting in collections and in the dark for a long time before anyone put them together. It's the largest eagle Australia has ever produced, half again the mass of a wedge-tailed. And the leading idea is that it took juvenile megafauna, young kangaroos, possibly young diprotodon, which means that in this world, being the size of a pony did not necessarily take you off the menu, and the danger did not always come from the ground. It passes over you at maybe 40 meters, and its shadow crosses your face, and you feel it go. The camp is packed. Up the next morning, you understand the reason. Before anyone communicates it, the shoreline is a mess, and the fish are already turning in the sun, and this is not a place to be for the next while. They walk inland, and you go with them, and the country you cross is the driest you have seen. Hard-packed clay, cracked into plates, dead saltbush, no water anywhere. And 2 days later, the sky closes over. It doesn't build the way weather does in temperate places. It arrives. A gray-blue mass moving up from the southwest, with a shelf of cloud along its leading edge, and the temperature drops 15 degrees in an hour, and then it rains the way it rains here, which is all at once. The cracked clay pan you're standing on becomes a sheet of water in about 20 minutes. You stand in it with your arms out and your head back, and so does everybody else. And one of the children is running in circles, screaming with delight, and nobody tells her to stop. But the extraordinary thing happens the following night, and it happens underground. You hear it start after dark, 1 sound, then 4, then 100, then 1,000, then a number you cannot process until the entire plain, in every direction, is one continuous, throbbing wall of noise, so loud you have to raise your voice to be heard over it. Frogs. They have been down there the whole time. Water-holding frogs burrow a meter into the clay, shed a cocoon of skin around themselves that seals in every drop of moisture, and go dormant for a year, for 2 years, for 5, for as long as it takes. Their bladders swell with stored water until they're round as golf balls. Aboriginal people across the desert have always known this and known exactly which ground to dig in when there is no other water anywhere. One rainfall of sufficient depth reaches them, and they come up, all of them, on the same night, and they have perhaps 3 weeks to breed before the clay pan dries again, and they go back down. You crouch at the edge of a puddle with your hands in it, and the water is already full of movement. Tadpoles by morning, some of them, and something else. Small pale shapes swimming on their backs, shield-shaped, fringed with hundreds of tiny legs. Shield shrimp. Their eggs sit in dry dust, sometimes for decades, waiting. When the water comes, they hatch within a day, grow to full adult size within a week, breed, lay, and die as the puddle evaporates, and their eggs lie in the dust and wait again. The whole desert has been holding its breath, not metaphorically, literally, in cysts and cocoons and buried seed, an entire ecosystem paused mid-sentence, waiting for the correct amount of water. By the end of that week, the plain has turned green, and then it turns white and yellow and pink because everything flowers at once and the birds come, not from anywhere you can point to, from everywhere. Ducks in their thousands over country that had no water in it 4 days ago. Pelicans, which somehow know, across 1,000 kilometers of desert, that there is now a lake here. Nobody is entirely sure how they know. You lie awake in the middle of it with the frogs roaring, and the sky full of stars and wet grass under you, and it is the loudest, most alive place you have ever been. And then, underneath the frogs, you hear something else, a slow booming, deep, deeper than any frog, spaced out in long intervals, coming from somewhere out in the new shallow water. Boom. A pause of 5 or 6 seconds. Boom. Every frog within 100 meters of that sound has gone silent. You go looking for it at first light, which is probably foolish, and you do it anyway. The new water is warm and shin-deep, and the sun isn't up yet, only the pale gray that comes before it, and the whole flooded plain is steaming faintly. The frogs have wound down to a scattered chorus. Every 20 seconds or so, that boom comes again, and it is close now, and it is coming from a dense stand of reeds ahead of you that has grown up out of nothing in a week. Boom! You can feel it in your sternum. It sounds like someone blowing across the mouth of an enormous empty jar buried underground. You part the reeds, and the thing making it is a bird about the size of a chicken. It's a heron, essentially long-necked, streaked brown and buff, standing frozen with its bill pointed straight up at the sky, which is what they do when they think they've been seen, because in that posture, the vertical stripes on its throat line up perfectly, With the vertical reeds and the bird ceases to exist, an Australasian bittern. To make the sound it swallows air, inflating its esophagus into a resonating chamber, and then forces it out. The result carries for kilometers across flat water on a still morning, and it is so deep and so wrong for the size of the animal producing it that people have been getting it badly wrong for as long as there have been people here to hear it. It is one of the birds most often blamed for the bunyip. And that's worth sitting with for a moment, because the bunyip is not a simple story. When Europeans arrived on this continent in the 19th century and started asking about the strange bones washing out of riverbanks and cave floors, enormous jaws, teeth like nothing living, Aboriginal people in several regions identified them, and the word that came back more than once was bunyip, which means that people were being shown diprotodon fossils and were telling the newcomers, correctly, that these belonged to a very large animal that used to live in the water and the swamps and is not around any more. Somewhere in the translation that turned into a monster. But underneath it, there is an unbroken thread of memory and interpretation reaching back into exactly the world you have been walking through for the past week. The bittern breaks and flies, all legs and slow wing beats, and the reeds close behind it. You leave the group 2 days later. There's no drama in it. They're moving north along the flood, following the water and the birds, and you find yourself standing on the last rise, looking east instead, at a line of dark broken country on the horizon, and the old man watches you look at it for a while, and then says something and points with his whole hand, flat, indicating a direction and something about the direction, and you nod as though you've understood. Somebody gives you a kulamon of water. Somebody else gives you a bundle of dried meat wrapped in bark. Then they walk one way, and you walk the other, and that's all. The stone country takes 2 days to reach, and it is a different planet, sandstone, great tilted slabs of it, orange and streaked with black, weathered into towers and overhangs and narrow gorges, and the ground between is spinifex and stunted eucalypts growing straight out of cracks. The heat comes off the rock in the afternoon, like an open oven, and then the rock gives it back all night. The escarpment ahead of you rises in steps, and there are things moving on it. Rock wallabies, dozens, spread across a near vertical face, doing something that your eyes keep refusing to accept. Running up rock at speed, at angles no animal should be able to hold, changing direction on ledges the width of a book. Their feet are the trick. The soles are thickly padded and heavily textured, with a granular, almost rubberized grip, and the tail is long and used as a counterweight rather than a prop. They can climb a tree trunk if the bark is rough enough. They routinely jump gaps of 4 meters onto a landing they cannot see until they're airborne. You watch one come down a face that must be 60 degrees in a series of controlled bounces, hit the flat, and stop dead, chewing, entirely unimpressed with itself. The gorge you follow that afternoon narrows and cools, and the air fills with a smell you can't place. Sharp, musky, fermented, somewhere between apricots and ammonia. Then the noise starts. Flying foxes, a camp of them, thousands, hanging in the paper barks, along the watercourse in dense black clusters. And every single one of them is arguing. They squabble, shuffle, wrap and unwrap their wings, drop and rehang, and the collective sound is a continuous shrieking chatter that fills the entire gorge. They're large, a meter across the wings, with a fox's face, proper eyes, proper ears, a dog's muzzle. And they're eating and being eaten by nothing. And they are one of the most important things in this landscape because they carry pollen and seed dozens of kilometers a night between flowering trees, stitching forests together across gaps nothing else can bridge. Above them, on a shelf of sandstone catching the last direct sun, something long and gray is lying absolutely still. You know the shape now. Megalania, stretched full length on hot rock, with all four legs splayed and its tail hanging over the edge, doing what every lizard on Earth does at the end of a cold night, which is bank heat for tomorrow. It's 5 meters of animal and it looks, from here, entirely peaceful. You sit down on the opposite side of the gorge, 40 meters away and safely above, and you watch it for an hour, and something shifts. Not the fear exactly. The fear is still there, but it's joined by something else, which is the plain fact that this is simply a large lizard warming itself on a rock, doing nothing wrong, in the last few thousand years of a lineage that had been running for millions. And that's the honest position on all of this. Everything you've seen here is real, in the sense that it existed. What we know about it comes from a small number of extraordinarily generous places, the cave systems at Narrated, where the pitfall traps collected 250,000 years of continuous fauna, the fossil beds at Riverslea in the northwest of Queensland, where limestone formed in a way that preserved bone in 3 dimensions, including skulls of animals nobody had imagined, the dry lake beds of the Willandra, where footprints and hearths and burials sat undisturbed under sand, and the science keeps moving. Isotopes locked in tooth enamel now tell us what individual animals ate and roughly where they drank, season by season, across the years of their lives. Trace elements in Gignornis eggshell fragments have been used to argue about whether those birds were browsing or grazing, and to argue about the fires that scorched them. Whole new species, like that enormous eagle, are still being pulled out of museum drawers and cave floors within the last decade. Some people are now working on the reverse problem. There is serious, well-funded effort going into the thylacine genome, into reconstructing it from preserved specimens and editing it into the cells of its closest living relative, whether that ever produces a living animal, and whether the animal it produces would truly be a thylacine or an approximation wearing its coat, is a question people argue about with real feeling. The megafauna you've walked among here is further out of reach. Diprotodon DNA has not survived in usable form. 50,000 years of Australian heat is not kind to genetic material. So this stays a thought experiment, but it stays a thought experiment built almost entirely out of things we can point at, measure, and hold. The Megalania eventually gets up, slides off the shelf, and is gone into the rocks below without a sound. Night comes and you make your bed on a ledge, and the gorge fills with the sound of the flying foxes leaving, a 20-minute exodus of leathery wing beats in the dark. And then, in the quiet after, something crosses the gap above you. It comes off a high branch on your side, and it doesn't fly. It spreads. A membrane opens between wrist and ankle, and it becomes a flat-furred rectangle, sailing across 60 meters of open air, tail streaming out behind, and it lands with a soft thump on a trunk on the far wall and immediately scampers upward out of sight. A greater glider, gray-white in the starlight, with enormous round ears and the softest fur of any Australian mammal, and a diet consisting entirely of eucalyptus leaves, which are so low in nutrition and so loaded with toxins that the animal survives by moving as little as possible and sleeping most of the day. 2 more come across while you lie there, then a 4th, much smaller, a feather tail, the size of your thumb, gliding on a membrane no bigger than a playing card. In the morning, you climb. It takes 3 hours to get to the top of the escarpment, and the last section is hands and feet. And when you pull yourself over the lip, the wind hits you, and the whole eastern world opens out below. There's grassland, then woodland, and then, far out, 30 or 40 kilometers away, a flat pale line, and beyond it a blue that is not sky, the sea. You stand there working it out, and it takes a moment because something about it is deeply wrong. The coast is in the wrong place. You stand on the escarpment for a long time, trying to make the coastline behave. It's too far away. That's the problem. You know roughly what this part of the world looks like, and the sea should not be 30 or 40 kilometers out beyond that grassland. There should not be that much country between here and the water, but there is. And once you accept it, everything else follows. The oceans are low, enormously low. Water that would otherwise be sitting in the sea is currently locked up in ice sheets across the northern hemisphere, kilometers thick over Canada and Scandinavia, and the sea level has dropped somewhere between 80 and 120 meters below the mark you're familiar with, which means the continent you're standing on is bigger than the one on your maps, substantially bigger. Australia and New Guinea are joined. One landmass, no strait. A single continuous country that geologists call Sahul. Tasmania is not an island. You could walk to it across the Bassian Plain, a broad grassy lowland where Bass Strait will one day be, with a great freshwater lake sitting in the middle of it. The Gulf of Carpentaria is not a gulf, it's an inland lake. And the coastline itself, the line you're squinting at from up here, is somewhere out on what will eventually be the continental shelf, under 30 meters of water, invisible to everyone who comes after. You start down. It takes the rest of that day to get off the escarpment, and 2 more to cross the country below it, and every step of it, once you're past the halfway point, is overground that in your own century is seabed. You keep thinking about that, and then losing hold of it. This is a plain of open woodland with red gums along the creek lines. There are kangaroos here in the hundreds, and emus, and a wedge-tailed eagle sitting on a dead branch, watching you go past with the flat disdain of a bird that has never been afraid of anything. There are anthills. There's a goanna crossing the sand with its tail lifted. There are also, twice, tracks that stop you dead. A wide-splayed print with the tail drag beside it, older than the ones you saw at the clay pan. Half collapsed at the edges. Even out here, at night you can hear the sea, which is not something you expected, a faint, constant undertone beneath everything else. On the 3rd morning, you come out through a belt of coastal scrub, and the land drops into dunes, and the dunes drop onto a beach, and it is completely, absurdly empty. 20 kilometers of white sand in either direction, and not one thing on it that anybody put there. You walk down and stand in the shallows, and the water is cold and clean and startlingly clear, and small waves come up over your ankles. And the sound of it is precisely the same sound the sea has always made. That's the thing that gets under your ribs. The kangaroos are wrong. The lizards are wrong. The birds have voices you don't recognize. But the sea is identical. Every wave that breaks on that sand breaks the way waves broke last week in your century, and the way they'll break in 1,000 years. And the sound of it is the one thing on this entire continent that has not moved at all. You spend the whole day there. There are shore birds working the wet sand in a tight, busy flock. Small ones, gray and white, running in and out with the wash on legs like matchsticks, probing constantly sandpipers and knots and godwits. And here is what those birds are doing. They breed in the Arctic, on the tundra of Siberia and Alaska, in a summer that lasts about 6 weeks, and then they fly here, down the entire length of Asia, across the equator, to the mudflats and beaches of the Australian coast, some of them covering 10 or 11,000 kilometers in a season, some of them making single flights of over 5 days, without landing, without eating, without sleeping in any way we understand. They have been doing it along essentially this route for far longer than there have been humans to notice. And they are doing it right now, on this beach that is not on any map, to a coastline that will be drowned. Out past the break, a dark shape rolls, then another, a blunt black back coming out of the water and going in again, and then a spout, and then a tail, lifting clear and sliding under, with almost no splash at all. Southern right whales, a cow and a calf, working slowly east, a few 100 meters out. They're right on the surface for most of it, and you can hear them breathe from where you're standing. The calf keeps rolling over its mother's back and sliding off. She tolerates it. These animals will be hunted almost to nothing in about 50,000 years' time, reduced in the space of a single human lifetime from tens of thousands to a few hundred. Because they're slow, they float when they're killed, and they come close to shore to calve. Right now there is nobody to do it, and the ocean along this coast holds numbers of them that nobody in your century has ever seen. Further out, sea lions haul themselves onto a rock platform and lie in heaps, roaring at each other in short hoarse barks, and pups porpoise through the shallows between them. You swim, briefly, badly, and get out again quickly because a shape passed under you about 4 meters down. That was longer than you, and moving without any particular hurry. And you decide, on balance, to appreciate the ocean from the sand. Late in the afternoon, you sit up in the dune grass with your back to the wind and watch the light go, and you let yourself think about the thing you've been avoiding since you got down here. All of this drowns, not violently, slowly, beginning in a few thousand years and continuing for around 7,000 more. As the northern ice melts and the water comes back, the sea will rise up over this beach and this plain and the whole shelf behind it. It will do it at a rate that, in a bad century, is a meter of vertical rise, which on ground, this flat means the water coming inland by a kilometer or more within a person's lifetime. The Bassian Plain floods in Tasmania becomes an island, and the people living on it are cut off from the rest of humanity for around 10,000 years. The Gulf fills, New Guinea separates. The map begins to look like the one you know, and people watched it happen. That's the part that stays with you. Around the Australian coastline, there are Aboriginal oral traditions that describe, specifically and in detail, a coastline further out than the present one. Stories of islands that were once hills you could walk to. Stories naming country that is now underwater and describing the sea coming in over it. When researchers compared those accounts against the sea level record, against the actual bathymetry of the drowned shelf, a striking number of them line up with real coastlines that existed between 7 and 10,000 years ago, which would make them among the oldest accurate accounts of anything, anywhere, held and passed on and kept correct across something like 300 generations of people, telling it to the next people, not written down, told. You sit in the grass on a beach that those stories are about, several thousand years before the water starts coming, and you watch the sun go down into an ocean that is currently a very long way from where it will end up. The light does what it does here, gold, then orange, then a red that gets into the sand, and then a green line on the horizon for about 4 seconds, and then the enormous blue-purple dusk that goes on for far longer than it should. The whales blow twice more, further out, invisible now, behind you, up in the scrub. Something starts calling, a rising, questioning, 3-note whistle repeated over and over, and you have absolutely no idea what it is, and you never will. The shorebirds settle in a tight gray mass at the top of the beach, all facing the same direction, into the wind, and you lie back in the dune grass with the sand still warm underneath you from the day, and the frogs starting somewhere inland, and the sea keeping its steady time, and above you the whole sky filling up, star by star, with the same pattern, the whales, and the birds, and the people at the fires, and the lizard on the rock, and everything else on this continent has been sleeping under since long before any of it had a name. The moon comes up late and enormous, and the whole beach turns silver. You wake for it without meaning to. That happens out here. You sleep in pieces, surfacing 4 or 5 times a night, and each time the world has rearranged itself slightly, and each time you go under again easier than the last. The first time you wake, the tide is further out, and the wet sand is a sheet of moonlight from the dune to the water. The second time, there is a bandicoot working the seaweed at the top of the beach, a small hunched shape with a long pointed nose, digging quick conical holes and pushing its face into them. It stops once and looks straight at you across 10 meters of moonlit sand, and then goes back to the seaweed because you have been lying still long enough to have become part of the landscape. The third time, the waves are glowing faintly, a soft blue-green light running along the inside of each breaker, and then scattering into the foam and fading. Bioluminescent plankton, disturbed by the turbulence, doing the oldest light show on Earth. You watch it for a while without properly deciding to be awake, and somewhere in there, the last few days start coming back to you in pieces, out of order, the way things do, when you're not holding on to them. The warmth under your hand on that first morning, the coarse hair, the animal's whole side moving with its breathing, the small dark eye, looking at you with no fear in it at all, because there had never been a reason to build any. The 2 long yellow incisors, grinding sideways, the bird on the mound, pushing its beak into the sand and holding it there, reading a temperature to within a degree, the old man's hand pressed flat over his mouth, twice until you copied it. The taste of that bread, gritty and nutty and slightly bitter, and the fact that nobody around that fire found it worth mentioning. The bittern in the reeds, with its bill pointed at the sky, making a noise that built a monster. The frogs coming up out of a meter of dry clay on the same night. All of them, after years of waiting. The lizard on the warm rock, with its tail hanging over the edge. The the striped shape crossing the stream, and the enormous slow yawn. You turn over, the sand is still faintly warm underneath. Here's what happens to all of it within about 10,000 years of the moment you're lying in, and possibly considerably less. Most of the large animals you have met on this journey will be gone from this continent entirely. The diprotodon, the short-faced kangaroos, all of them, the marsupial lion, Megalania, Genyornis, Palorchestes with its ruined nose and its extraordinary arms, Zygomaturus, Quincana, the giant wombat, the giant echidna, the giant eagle, the mound builders, Wonambi. Something between 40 and 60 species of large animals, depending on how you count, and none of them leave anything behind of the same size. Why is one of the longest-running arguments in the study of the past, and it is still running. Some of the evidence points at climate. The arid cycles getting harsher, the Great Lakes drying for good, the water going and not coming back. Some of it points at people, the timing of arrival, the fire regimes, the pressure on slow-breeding animals that had never needed to be quick about anything. Most researchers now suspect it was both, tangled together, working over thousands of years, with different answers in different parts of the continent. Nobody was there with a notebook. The dates are hard-won and still argued over. The honest position is that we do not entirely know. But this part is simple. It happened slowly enough that nobody living through it would have called it an event. The generation after you would notice nothing. The one after that might notice that a certain animal is no longer seen in a certain valley. 10 generations on, the big ones are rare enough to be remarkable. 40 generations on, there's something the old people describe and the young people have never seen. And then, eventually, they are bones in a cave that a stranger picks up in the dark and turns over in his hands without knowing what he's holding. That's how it goes. Not with a last stand, with a slow forgetting. The Thylacine gets an ending we can date because it happens recently enough that there's paperwork. It vanishes from the mainland thousands of years ago and holds on in Tasmania, and then it meets a bounty scheme, and the last confirmed one dies in a Hobart Zoo on the night of the 7th of September, 1936, from exposure after being locked out of its shelter. Protection had been granted 59 days earlier, but not everything went. That's worth saying plainly once, because it's easy to leave a story like this thinking the whole of it is over. The echidna is still here, smaller now, but still walking around on the same ancient blueprint, still laying eggs, still reading electrical fields in the soil with the tip of its nose. The platypus is still in the creeks, closing its eyes and its ears and its nostrils, and sweeping that soft bill across the gravel, hunting blind, exactly as it did in front of you. The bilby is still digging its spiral burrows, though not in as many places as it was. The betongs still carry grass home in their tails. The flying foxes still fill a gorge with noise and carry pollen 40 kilometers in a night. The rock wallabies still come down a 60-degree face without slowing. The bittern still booms in the reeds and still gets mistaken for something impossible. The wedge-tailed eagle still sits on a dead branch and watches you go past without concern. The waders still come down from the Arctic every year along the same coast to a beach that has moved inland but is otherwise the same idea. and the people whose fire you sat beside, and whose bread you ate, and whose footprints you followed up a beach, they are still here too, continuously, across every one of the sea level rises, and the droughts and the dust storms, and the arrivals, without a break, on the same continent, holding accounts of a shoreline that has been underwater for 7,000 years and getting the details right. That's not a small thing to have carried. The moon has moved a long way west. You sit up once near the end of the night because something large goes past below you on the wet sand. You catch the shape of it against the shine, low and heavy and unhurried. And it doesn't stop and it doesn't look up. And by the time you're properly awake, it's 200 meters down the beach, and it could have been anything. You lie back down. The sky is beginning to gray out over the water in the east, and the stars are going one at a time. The small ones first, and the sea keeps doing what it has always done. And somewhere behind you, in the scrub, that 3-note whistle starts again, the one you'll never have a name for. Your eyes are heavy in the particular way they get when the night is nearly finished. You think, without any urgency at all, about how you got here. You went to sleep, that's all. You went to sleep in a room with a ceiling and walls, and the low hum of something electrical down the hall, and you woke up on your side on red sand, with the light coming orange through your eyelids, and the smell of dust and eucalyptus, and something breathing nearby that was much larger than you. You never found out what made the sound that first morning, the one that stopped every animal at the water at the same moment and sent you along the ridge at a crouch with your heart going. You have a fairly good idea now. The wind drops the way it does, just before dawn, and everything goes very quiet, and the waves get softer, and the sand under your shoulder is exactly the right temperature, and you let your eyes close, and the sound of the sea keeps going. It gets slower. It gets further away. It stops sounding quite like water and starts sounding like something else, steadier, flatter, a low continuous hum that could be almost anything. There's a ceiling above you. It's dark, and it's close, and it's perfectly flat, and it doesn't move. You lie there for a while without opening your eyes properly in that thin layer between the two, where both places are true at once, and neither one has fully arrived. You can still feel warm sand along your shoulder. You can still smell dust and salt. And a very long way underneath all of it, so faint you'd miss it if the room weren't so quiet, you can almost hear something breathing, slow and deep, out there on a plain that is now the bottom of the sea. Then the room settles. The hum resolves into the refrigerator, and the continent goes back to where it has been the whole time, which is exactly where you left it. The same red ground, the same wide sky, the same coastline in a different place, holding its footprints and its bones and its bread ovens and its 700 sets of tracks in the clay, waiting patiently for anyone who wants to go and look. Sleep well, and if you'd like another, the channel will be waiting.